So once again, thanks very much for coming out. I really appreciate it. And what we're talking about today is spirituals to hip-hop. And as you can see, spirituals to hip-hop pretty much covers the whole range of American music, from the American Revolutionary era all the way up until today. And so today we're going to be looking at the diversity of American music. Because American music is so diverse and so eclectic and so dynamic, it's so unique to the world, and that's partly because we are a nation of immigrants, and that's partly because we were also a nation of slavery. And that difference and that dynamism and that diversity of Americans actually affected American music. And our music reflects who we are as a nation. Our music reflects our history, it reflects our evolution, it reflects our culture, it reflects the good things about America, it reflects the bad things about America. And as we look at music, music we realize is a prism for understanding America. And I'm sorry here. Something's not working. There we go. Let's see if it works. Now, if we're going to talk about American music, we have to talk about American slavery. We're going to get to that in 1 second, okay? But if we're going to talk about American music, we're going to be learning a number of different things. We're going to be learning about the drum and the banjo. We're going to be learning about double entendre. We're going to be learning about how music expresses angst. Music expresses the troubles and the hardships that people have. And we're going to learn that the main musics in America are actually a reflection of what was going on in America at the time. For example, spirituals came out of slavery. Blues and jazz came out of segregation. Rock and roll came out of discrimination. And hip-hop came out of urban decay and police brutality. So every element of American music comes out of something that's happening in American culture. And the final thing we're going to be learning about today is complement and competition. White America and Black America not only competed against each other, but they also complemented each other. Some would say that there's some stealing going on, some borrowing going on, but I think it's more as people learn about new music and they love it, they want to copy it, they want to play it, they want to listen to it, they want to be part of it. And so there's this competition and this complement that's taking place. And if we're going to talk about American music, we have to start with American slavery. Unfortunately, American slavery was part of our culture and part of our politics, but it also brought some beautiful music to America, because these African Americans had technical virtuosity, they had improvisational skills, and they had structural imagination. And that's pretty amazing. And where did this come from? Where did this virtuosity come from? Where did this imagination come from? It came from necessity, because the African American had everything taken away from them. They had their language, their religion, their culture. They had everything removed, their history. Everything was removed from them. So they had to create it all on their own. They had to create their own culture. They had to create their own music. They had to create their own traditions, because it was taken away from them. And these skills that the African American slave learned became very important to American music. And American music has been studied. For example, this gentleman right here, Miles Mark Fisher, he put a book together about Negro slave songs, and he said that there's 5 basic elements to African American slave spirituals. The first one is rhythm. The second one are stories from Ireland and from Scotland that came over and influenced the African slave. The third are religious hymns, and then we'll be taking a look at some of those. The fourth are melodies from the colonies. And number 5 are the events in the slave's life that affected the music that they're listening to. And it's amazing to me that the African American created such beautiful music under such horrible conditions as slavery. And as I said earlier, we're going to talk about the drum. And the drum is actually called the Jumbaye, D-J-E-M-B-E. And as you can see right here, here's an image of African American slaves, and you see an image of the Jumbaye right there. And the Jumbaye was very important to the African American slave. They brought the Jumbaye over to America from Africa. And it's been determined that the Jumbaye is from the Mali Empire, and it was probably created somewhere around the 12th or the 13th century. So once again, the Jumbaye is very important to the African American. In fact, the first time the Jumbaye was made, okay, in Africa, they would actually pray to the tree. And then they would cut down the tree, right? And then they would kill a cat or something for the cover. They would stretch the skin of the animal over it. And then they would take cat gut or some other kind of gut to then tie the edge of the top of the drum so it's nice and tight, okay? But this was important to the African in Africa. They would pray to the tree, and they would thank the tree. They would thank the gods. They would thank the spirits for this drum. And in fact, Jumbaye means talking ear. Talking ear. Meaning, the drum was a form of communication for the African. And here's an image of a Jumbaye that you would find today, and you could buy one at any music store or any folk festival. Now, the next instrument is the banjo, and you'll see an example of the banjo right here. In fact, what is the banjo but basically a Jumbaye with a stick added on to the end and strings? Essentially, that's what a Jumbaye is. I mean, that's what a banjo is. And here's an example of a modern banjo. And you can see the banjo is actually one small little piece, but then there's a back part to the banjo, which is the resonator, which helps the sound move forward. So the drum and the banjo are integral parts of American music. And if you take a look at this image right here, you see a young man, and a European young man, right? A white boy playing the banjo. So even though the banjo was part of the African culture, it came to America and became part of American culture. And I want to ask you one question. What music in America does not have a drum? Chirp, 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 right? Because all American musics have rhythm and have a drum. Maybe bluegrass doesn't have a drum, right? Maybe some folk music doesn't have a drum from the Appalachian Mountains. But the drum is an integral part of American music, and so is the banjo. In fact, the banjo is so much part of American music that green frogs even use the banjo when they're playing, what is it, Rainbow Connection, or Isn't Easy Being Green? At least I grew up with Kermit the Frog. So the banjo is an integral part of American culture. Now, if we're going to talk about African American music and African American spirituals, it's important to note that they use this music to pass on information to future generations. But their music was also used as work songs. They would play work songs in Africa, and then when they came to America as slaves, they used the same songs to help them work. And I have an example here of one of those work songs. It's called Aki. You can hear the drum very strongly here in the song. And this was used to work, because if the African is working, they're all working together to the rhythm of the music. And if they're digging a pit, they're all working to the same rhythm. So these types of rhythm songs, work songs, were brought with the African to America when they came here as American slaves. Now I have a second song here that I want to play for you. This is our first example of a double entendre song from the African American spirituals. It's called Knee Bone Bend. Knee Bone Bend. Now listen. Do you hear a drum? There's no drum. But this rhythm, right, they're using their hands, they're using their feet. Okay? Now, why are they not using a drum? Because the drum was banned. Why was the drum banned? Because the drum was used to communicate. In fact, the drum was used in the Stono Rebellion to gather slaves for the rebellion. So once the South Carolinians realized that the drum is a talking ear, they banned the drum. But just because you ban something doesn't mean it goes away. Just because they banned alcohol in the 1920s, did people stop drinking? No, exactly. So just because you ban something, it doesn't mean it goes away. Now listen again. Knee bone bend. They're banging their knees, right? So this song is about the bend in the knee, right? No, not at all. That's what they want the white master to think. In fact, the knee bone bend is the bend in the river. because the bend in the river is the low part. They can cross the river at the bend. So they're actually singing about freedom. They're actually singing about where to escape, to go to the knee-bone bend, and at the knee-bone bend you can actually escape. So here's an example of a song that is about one thing to the slave, and the master is hearing something completely different. The master thinks they're singing about their knees. No, they're singing about the knee-bone bend. Now, some of these songs that came out of the African-American slave tradition were very religious, okay? And this particular one is called, "O Lord, I'm Waiting on You." And this is a perfect example of a call and response. Where you have a one lead singer calling out the lyric, and then you have other people in the audience then coming back with the lyric from the call.
Down here, Lord.
Down here, Lord.
Waiting on you. Down here, Lord. Waiting on you. Down here, Lord. Waiting on you. Can't do nothing till the Spirit comes.
Down here, Lord, I'm waiting on you. So the white master is listening to this thinking, oh, they're talking about Christ. They're talking about God. And they're talking about, down here on earth, we're waiting for you. No, that's not what they're singing about. They're singing about down here in the deep south. They're way down here in the deep south, and they're waiting on someone. They're waiting on Harriet Tubman. They're waiting on Peg Leg Joe. They're waiting on the Underground Railroad. They're waiting on Abraham Lincoln. They're waiting on William Tecumseh Sherman. They're waiting on someone to come down here and free them. So once again, even religious songs are double entendre. They're singing one thing that the white master thinks they're singing, but in fact, they're really thinking about something completely different. Now, there are some songs that are not double entendre. They're pretty straightforward, okay? And if you listen really closely, you know what they're singing about. But the white master was pretty stupid, because the white master really didn't listen. In fact, all the white master cared was that they were singing. Why? Because the song is a cowbell. Just like the farmer knows where the cow is because of the cowbell, the master knows where the slaves are because they're singing. So the master wanted their slaves to sing. And the master also believed that a singing slave is a happy slave. Boy, was he wrong, right? But that's what they believed. Now, this next song that I want to play for you is called "Follow the Drinking Gourd." And this is considered an escape song. Let me just start it off for you here. Here we go.
Follow the drinking gourd. Follow the drinking gourd. For the old man said, follow the drinking gourd.
Now, what is a drinking gourd? Well, in Africa, the drinking gourd was a gourd that they drank from. Okay? And what was the drinking gourd on the slave plantation in the South? The drinking gourd was the gourd that they would drink from. There would be a slave girl, and she would have a bucket of water. And she would have also a drinking gourd. And she would walk around, and she would give the drinking gourd to the slaves so they could have some water. So if you wanted water, what did you do? You followed the drinking gourd, right? Okay, so the master thinks that these slaves are singing about a drinking gourd. Let's keep listening.
When the sun come back, when the first quail calls, follow the drinking gourd. When the sun come back, then the time is come. The drinking gourd.
The drinking gourd is not a drinking gourd. The drinking gourd is the Big Dipper. And the Big Dipper points to the Polaris, the North Star. So if you follow the drinking gourd, you're going north. If you follow the drinking gourd, you're heading towards freedom. So this is actually an escape song. And if you listen closely, they actually give you directions on where to go, what river to cross, when to cross it, and who to meet.
The river's bank hits a very good road. A dead tree shows the way. Left foot, peg foot, going on.
Left foot, peg foot. That's Peg Leg Joe. Peg-Leg Joe was on the Underground Railroad, and Peg-Leg Joe would put charcoal marks on the trees so you know which way to go. And Peg-Leg Joe would then meet you and then help you on to the next part of the Underground Railroad. This song is a map on how to escape.
Oh, the drinking gourd,
You see the drinking gourds right up here.
drinking gourd, the drinking gourd.
Now another song that had a double entendre, double meaning, was also a religious song. What we're talking about here is Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. And here I have a version sung by the great Paul Robeson.
Sweet chariot, come in to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, come in to carry me home.
So of course the white master thinks they're singing about two kings, right? The white master thinks that they're singing about Elijah's chariot, right? The white master thinks they're singing about the Bible, right? That the chariot's going to come down and bring them to heaven. No, that's not what they're singing about. They're singing about the Underground Railroad. Swing low into the deep south. The chariot is the Underground Railroad. So once again, here's another example of a song that sounds like it's one thing, but it's really something completely different. Now, I do have one more double entendre song that I want to play for you, and it's my favorite. It's called Go Down, Moses.
When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand, let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land. Hello, the Pharaoh, to let my people go.
Way down in Egypt land, tell the Pharaoh to let my people go. Are they really singing about Moses? Are they really singing about Egypt? When they say way down in Egypt land, they're really thinking way down in the Southland, right? When they're saying, Pharaoh, let my people go, they're really saying, slave master, let my people go. Now, if you remember the story of Moses, didn't Moses ask the Pharaoh to let his people go? And what did the Pharaoh say? No. And then the plagues, right? All the plagues came. And I believe the last plague was actually the Pharaoh said, I'm going to smite the firstborn of Israel, right? And then Moses said, oh my God, what have you done to your own people? Because God told Moses that the next plague would be by Pharaoh's own hand. So because he did not let the slaves go, and because he said that the firstborn of Israel will die, what happened? The firstborn of Egypt died. Now I want you to think for a minute, because this is really a song of prophecy. Did we let the slaves go in America? No. So what happened? The firstborn of every American home died. Think about it. All the sons in the north and in the south died. Why? Because we did not let the slaves go. This is amazing, because the slaves are actually singing about the future of America. They're actually singing prophecy.
Spake the Lord, whom Moses said, let my people go. If not, I'll smite your firstborn dead. Let my people go. Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt land.
And who was Moses anyway? Harry Tubman. Who was Moses anyway? Abraham Lincoln. Okay? So in the mind of the African American slave, they're thinking about one thing, but they're singing about something completely different. Now, the first time that these spirituals were heard throughout the United States came from this group of African American singers called the Fisk Jubilee Singers. This is in the 1870s. This is following the Civil War, okay? And it's Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. It was an all-white faculty and an all-black student body. And they raised money for the school by going around and singing European opera music. Now, the leader of this group, his name is George L. White. And he happened to also be a white guy. George L. White, it just goes to figure, right? But anyway, so George L. White is bringing these folks around the country to try to make money for the school. And they're not doing very well. They're not making a lot of money. People aren't really going to see these performances. But then one day, as the Fisk Jubilee singers are preparing backstage, they're warming up their vocal cords, right? They're getting ready. Someone in the back starts to sing this to get ready to sing. And then somebody else joins in the back. And then somebody else joins in. Now, what they're singing is called Steal Away to Jesus. But really, it was used as a song to tell slaves it's time for a meeting. Steal yourself away from the plantation because we're having a meeting tonight. But back to the Fisk Jubilee singers. They start singing this song, Steal Away, and the audience, the white audience, is like, that's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear European opera music. I can hear that anytime I want. I want to hear this stuff. This is new music that they've never heard before. So this is the kind of music that they wanted. And another song that they started playing is called Deep River. They're singing about the Ohio River, aren't they? Because that's where their home is. That's where freedom is, in the north over the Ohio River. But once again, this is the first time that we're really hearing authentic African American spirituals being sung by African Americans. Once again, this is in the 1870s and the 1880s. Now, what's unfortunate about this is this music was not really made popular, okay? It didn't really become popular, partly because of what else was going on in America at the time. Now we need to go back in time a little bit to the 1830s with Samuel Cartwright. Samuel Cartwright was a doctor in Louisiana who believed that the slaves had a disease. And that disease is drapetomania. And if you look, it's the running away syndrome. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was a slave, I'd want to run away too, right? I don't think that's a disease to want to run away. In fact, isn't it the number one job of a POW is to escape, right? So aren't they like POWs? But once again, we have this doctor who is saying that these African Americans have a disease. He also said that there is this thing called polygenesis in the world. In other words, he believed that the black man was a totally different species. Not a race, but a species. And so basically what we have is this idea of racism, of inferiority of the black man, which we know is not true. But it was spread by people like this. And so the idea of the black man being stupid is part of sort of the white man's thinking because of doctors like Cartwright. Now, this racism is going on in America while the slaves, this is the 1830s, 1840s, 1850s, slaves would gather together and they would perform for the children. Here's an example of an African American slave near at the plantation shacks. And if you notice, he's playing a fiddle and there's kids around, okay? He's performing a show for the children. And a lot of these, what we call minstrel shows, were taking place on the African American plantation. And what is a minstrel show? Songs, jokes, skits. What am I talking about? Late night TV. A variety show, basically, okay? Slaves are entertaining themselves. They're entertaining their families. And I actually have a little piece of what an authentic African-American minstrel show would sound like. This particular piece of music is called Go Down Muley. Go Down Muley.
Gentlemen, be seated. Campbell?
Yes, sir, Mr. Interlocutor.
I hears you've been seen driving a mule down the main street of this fair city.
That's right, Mr. Interlocutor. Sometimes I just get plain lonesome for the sight of a Georgia mule. I remember once I tried to teach a Georgia mule to pull a plow. That old mule got so mad, he kicked me unconscious. When I come to, I didn't know if I was in Georgia or Alabama. I looked all around and I said, is this me or not me? Or is the devil got me? Was that a musket shot me? As I lay here more than a week, that old mule do kick amazing. And I expect he's now a grazing on the other side of the
So that's just a small little example. You had a little humor at the beginning, and then you had music, and then they go on. There's more jokes, and like, why did the chicken cross the road? To get to the other side. That's where this joke comes from. The old minstrel shows, okay? But what happened here was the white American observed the black slaves performing these things, and they copied it. They thought it was great, okay? So once again, we have the white man viewing the African American minstrel show taking place, and they tried to copy it, okay? So they would literally black themselves up, and this is extremely offensive, but this was one of the most popular forms of entertainment. White folks would put charcoal on their faces, they would wear white gloves, and they would act stupid, and they would act oversexed, and they would steal watermelons, and they would steal chickens. They're acting, they're pretending. Now, what's amazing here is the white man copies this, and they think that they're performing authentic African American music. But what the white man doesn't realize is the black man was making fun of the white man. So by copying the minstrel show, the white man is making fun of himself. And they didn't even realize it. The African American knew it, but the white man didn't. In fact, this is how minstrelsy came about. We have here, this is the actor, and this is what he looked like on stage. Now, you notice the big eyes, okay, and the messy hair. And I do have in 1846, these shows were described as such. Animated by savage energy. White eyes rolling in a curious frenzy. Dervish-like fury all night long. Violent exertions of frenetic dancing. They're talking about a minstrel show. I'm thinking about Lady Gaga. Think about it, okay? That's a Lady Gaga show, okay? So when you think about all this energy and rock and roll and all these performers, Madonna and Britney Spears and all these crazy performers, the idea of the energy actually comes from the minstrel show. So once again, we have we have white Americans that are copying the African American, and they think they're making fun of the black man, but in fact, the white man is making fun of himself. And there's a whole number of minstrel shows that existed in the 1830s, 40s, all the way up until the 1910s and 1920s, believe it or not. Now, one of the most famous characters created was Jim Crow. Jim Crow was a character created by a man named Thomas D. Rice. He's also known as Daddy Rice. And Daddy Rice went onto a plantation and saw African Americans making fun of white people, but he didn't know that. He copied it, he dressed up like a slave, and he created this character known as Jim Crow. And this character was oversexed, this character was stupid, this character was lazy, okay? And so the white American observing this minstrel show, they thought that the black man was lazy and stupid. No, they were not. This was a white man's interpretation of African American music. And here is Thomas Daddy Rice himself, who created the character Jim Crow. And they wrote a song called Jump, Jim Crow.
Jump, Jim Crow, jump, Jim Crow, how do? You walk so slow like a little red rooster with a one-trick leg. Look like you don't want to lay in the egg. Don't know when, but it'll be real soon. Going down the road by the light of the moon. Going to the city to see Zip Coon. Going to the city to see Zip Coon.
Now, Zip Coon was another character created by a white man. Zip Coon was an urban slave or a city slave. You notice he's all decked out, right? He's got his nice shoes, he's got his nice shirt, he's got the fluffs, he's got the nice hat. A lot different than this guy, right? Okay, this is your poor rural slave. This is considered to be your sort of, I don't want to say affluent, but your urban slave who has more opportunities for him. These characters were created by white people. And they actually wrote a song called, guess what? Zip Coon. Recognize this song from Turkey and the Straw. So once Jim Crow and once Zip Coon and these minstrel shows started to spread, we had minstrel shows popping up all over the place, like the Virginia minstrels or the Ethiopian serenaders. And then there's a whole number of other ones, such as the African melodists, the Congo minstrels, the Gumbo family, the Southern singers, the Sable minstrels, and even the New Orleans serenaders. These are all white Americans blacking themselves up and pretending to be African American. This is not authentic African American music or culture. This is a fraud. This is not real, okay? But these songs and this type of music was so popular that even songwriters like Stephen Foster got involved, and he wrote songs for the Christie's Minstrels, and you might recognize this one. It's called Old Folks at Home. By Stephen Foster, once again, a white man, writing songs that people think are for black people. Let's keep listening to this song. What did he just sing? Still longing for that old plantation. How can this be authentic African American music? Doesn't make any sense. No black man wants to go back to the plantation. So once again, this is evidence that these songs are not really authentic African American music. And this guy, by the way, Stephen Foster, he became the most popular songwriter of his time. And I know you'll recognize this one by him. Oh, Susanna, right?
Well, I come from Alabama with my banjo on my knee, and I've gone to Louisiana, my true love for to see.
Now you'll notice that in the lyric it says Banjo. Banjo was the name that Thomas Jefferson gave the banjo. So here's another example of, this is white vernacular, this is white English being used in an African American song. Now the most popular minstrel song of the time is called Old Dan Tucker, and some of you might recognize this.
Now old Dan Tucker's a fine old man, washed his face in a frying pan, combed his hair with a wagon wheel, died with a toothache in his heel. Get out the way, old Dan Tucker, you're too late to get your supper. Get out the way, old Dan Tucker, you're too late to get your supper. Tucker's come to town, riding the billy goat, leading the hound. The hound dog barked, the billy goat jumped, landed old Tucker on top of a stump. Get out the way, old Dan Tucker, you're too late to get your supper. Get out the way, old Dan Tucker, you're too late to get your supper.
Old Dan Tucker is made out to be an absolute idiot. This song was actually stolen by Daniel Emmett, okay? Why is that? Because he said he wrote this song, but he didn't. Because this song is about Captain Daniel Tucker. Captain Daniel Tucker was actually a reverend and a Revolutionary War hero. And his slaves loved him so much that they wrote a song about him. And this is, by the way, this is his gravesite. They wrote a song about him. And we know that Old Dan Tucker is a white man because there's books written about Old Dan Tucker. So once again, here we have Daniel Emmett stealing a song from black people, calling it his own, making fun of Old Dan Tucker as if he's a black man, but he's not. He's actually a white man. So we have a lot of this sort of stealing and borrowing and copying going on. And as minstrel shows continued, they got even more and more racist. And if you look at some of these images, these are white Americans dressed up in the sort of the blackface. There's one guy who didn't seem to want to get into costume, if you'll notice, okay? And this, how offensive is this? He looks like a clown, doesn't he? With his shoes and his